Welcome to an unnamed so far talk show kind of thing we'll be having going forward. Where we just discuss different topics of like be it film, art, music, just a little bit of conversation, hopefully fun conversation, maybe a little intense conversation going forward. But for this first one we're doing, it's going to be on The Little Mermaid, as partially picked by Lexi here. Before we get into the actual discussion, Lexi, why don't you go over why you picked The Little Mermaid as your topic?
I think a lot of people, when they see me because of my hair, they associate me with The Little Mermaid, and therefore I've just kind of like grasped onto it, because my hair was an accident. I'm actually naturally blonde, and then I dyed my hair accidentally red, because I wanted a lighter purple, and then I loved it, and it stayed this way. And then ever since then, everyone was like, you look like The Little Mermaid, you look like The Little Mermaid. And I just I fell in love with the character, I learned about the character, and you asked me if I had a good understanding of something, and I was like, I know this.
So what is it about the character itself that really grabbed you and drew you into it?
Well, I feel like I have a really young soul to begin with, so I like when I picked her, I guess, I was around the same age, and I felt the same things she felt, and I was like, I want to be in love, and so then, ever since then, I mean, granted, the older I get, I look at the movie and I'm like, she's 16, and I have more, like, parental views, but I definitely still love The Little Mermaid.
Yeah, both want to be in love, be free, be human for once, have a soul finally.
Right.
Other that's in the movie, but we'll get to that. Alright, so we also have Nathan here. Friend of the show, I guess would be the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Possible crew member going forward. Talking about a little off camera, let me explain your experience with Little Mermaid, or lack thereof.
I'd seen it when I was really young. I didn't pay much attention to it just because it just wasn't my thing. And then I started dating Lexi, and I found out how much she loved the character. So I'm like thrown into it. I know a lot more now because she knows so much, and she's always telling me new things about The Little Mermaid. So I feel like I'm a little more educated because of her.
He knows every word to part of your world now.
Yeah.
So for my own personal background with Little Mermaid, I did not grow up watching any of the Disney movies. I didn't realize this until much later. What I did do, admittedly, was play Kingdom Hearts as a kid. And Little Mermaid was an extensive part of both of those. And most people hated it, because swimming in games is bad, and musical numbers in games is also kind of bad. But I still enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the aesthetic of it, and I eventually did watch it later. But when you first go into a movie meant for especially kids in a lot of ways, older, you don't get to have the nostalgia goggles kind of on there helping you out. And so I don't have like a huge love for the movie, but I do have a fascination with it, where it's placed in history, especially in Disney's history, as well as it kind of encapsulates a lot of the good and the bad of Disney in a lot of ways, and how they affect society going forward. So I think this will be an interesting topic. We're going to be covering the movie, obviously. We're also going to be covering the original story. We're going to be briefly touching on the live action one. And we're going to discuss mermaids in general, because I think there's a lot to that, and that also kind of ties into changing the coloration of how you see the film when you understand the mythology that these creatures are based on, and how they've been kind of shaped into whatever story is being told. So we'll start with bringing up, there is a live action coming. It's not slated for a while. No idea how it's going to be. If it's anything like Beauty and the Beast or Jungle Book, it'll probably be good.
Yeah.
I mean, so far the live action movies haven't been groundbreaking. They've just been good, a little unnecessary, but still good. A lot of good cast in it. But the original movie, for those who don't know, kind of saved, similar to The Prince, kind of took Disney out of the water and gave life back into it. because Disney was struggling for a long time going through the 70s onwards. And so there's a Disney Renaissance in the 90s that had Little Mermaid, Lion King, to a lesser extent, stuff like Hunchback of Notre Dame, and then Tarzan being, I think, kind of where it stopped finally. Too much Phil Collins will do that usually. But Little Mermaid kind of started that. And it was a weird mix of bringing back the traditional animation style. Disney had actually been doing a lot of live action before that. And they actually held off on doing Little Mermaid until right when it came out towards the end of the 80s. I believe it was 88, 89, somewhere around there. Because they had a sequel coming out for their movie Splash, which, for anyone who hasn't seen, which is probably most people because it's not that great, was one of their live action affairs. It was a comedy about mermaids. And they were like, well, Splash 2 is coming out, and we know how much money that's going to make. So we're going to hold off on The Little Mermaid for just a little while. And Disney actually played with the idea of doing a Hans Christian Andersen story before. They were going to do an anthology of his stories, which would include that, Thumbelina, Little Ugly Duckling, a couple of other ones. And production started right after Snow White, so pretty early on, and it just never went anywhere. Eventually they went on to do Pinocchio instead, and then Fantasia and stuff like that. And a lot of the changes they made for the 80s version ended up kind of correlating with what changes they discovered the 30s one had, which I think is a little telling of some of the issues I have with the movie. But we'll get into that. So we'll start with the original film and kind of what it brought in. It brought in a lot of Broadway elements. And I don't know if either of you found that for better or worse. I don't know what your experiences with Broadway, because it's a love-hate for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, I mean, I love Broadway. I mean, I spent a lot of time on Broadway, just like watching all the shows and everything, so I do really enjoy it. And I'm like one of those persons that I love musicals. Other people are like, oh, if it sings, I don't want to watch it. But I like it.
Do you like musicals?
I didn't like them growing up, and I think that's a lot of the reasons why I didn't really care for The Little Mermaid. But she, again, showed me a lot of those and made me appreciate them in a different way, because as you're an adult seeing these for the first time, like you said, you don't have the nostalgia goggles. You're kind of just thrown into it, and with the state of mind that you are, being the age that you are, you have to form an opinion with the mindset that you have at that point. You don't have this senseless wonderment as a child that you do now. You have a lot more basic understanding of how the world is supposed to work.
You missed your chance to wish upon a star, and now it's not the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like musicals. My favorite being Cabaret, probably. But I've never been a fan of super big, eccentric, fun, like happy family musicals. But it's kind of, I feel like it's the same as pop music. I get why it's popular. I understand it, but not all of it grabs me all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I can understand why someone wouldn't like it. It does sometimes take away from the realness of the situation, I want to say. Like, if Ariel was to break out in song about how she wanted to be a rebel and she didn't want to be a part of the underworld, see, it's like, well, you're singing and you want to sing with her, but then you realize you're singing about a 16-year-old running away from home and not being able to come back.
Yeah. Which, for a 16-year-old, probably is perfect. Like, I get it. And there's a place for those stories, and there's places everywhere, really. It's a tale as old as time. But there is kind of a weird aspect of, you are seeing this through the perspective of Ariel. You're not seeing it through anyone else's perspective. And there could be a lot to that. The king is kind of shown as the overly doting father figure in the movie. He really pushes for a lot of things. And I feel like, as is the case in most real situations, if he just explained a little bit better of why he doesn't want her to do things, maybe it would make more sense.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a, I'm your dad, I told you so kind of situation.
Yeah, I feel like that's a flaw of a lot of movies like that. It's just kind of like, we're not going to communicate as much as we could. But if we could have, this could have been avoided.
Yeah. Although, to be fair, in those situations, I feel like parents in general don't communicate a lot.
Yeah.
Because you have to admit some things about yourself, and you still believe you have to be infallible to your kids.
Yeah.
I think there is, I can't remember if it's in the original movie, but there is like a brief mention that her mom died from people on land,
Yeah,
and that's why he's like that.
I think it was like slightly mentioned in the original, but they didn't go very far into it. Like, especially in the newer Disney movies, they really do go into the deaths
Yeah, which they did make sequels. They always make sequels to these now on home video. I watched the first sequel a long time ago. I don't remember much about it, but I have a good enough memory. I don't think it's because I was a kid. I think it kind of a their movie. But we're not going to go too much in those because they don't have to do with the original story. And I think there's like a third one that's a prequel.
Oh,
and I think that brings in her sisters, which is from the story, but not that important.
Yeah, I did really enjoy how the Hans Christian one did bring in more of the sister relationship.
Yeah. And that is kind of the big thing about it is, unlike a lot of the other Disney ones where their changes made it more family friendly and taking out some of the darker aspects, I feel like in the case of this one, while it took some of those out, it also took away some of the more progressive and interesting elements of the original Hans Christian story, which we'll get into when we get to the story itself. But a lot of the stuff people complain about in these movies, in particular like Little Mermaid, about how she sold her soul for a guy and also to be human, and that's kind of it. Even though she doesn't really want to be human, she just wants to live out there.
Yeah.
That part she kind of take or leave, but it's necessary to both live there and be with this guy she just met.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of parents are, in this day and age, is like, well, I don't want you to that as a child, I don't want my child to think, well, you have to throw your whole life away for some guy.
Yeah, because then when you get Romeo and Juliet, which is not a romance.
Yeah.
For any kids watching, do not take it to heart. Romeo and Juliet ends with death for a reason.
Yeah.
Also, Prince Eric's just boring. I wish Ariel had found someone else cooler out there on the ocean, not possibly.
Right?
I mean, there are other sea captains. Like, what was like Captain Nemo in 20,000 Leagues? They actually could have made something work. And Disney owns the rights to that film. Just thinking a crossover there might have been a little bit better. Live action's coming out.
Yeah.
Just send the check here, Disney, please. Yeah, the prince has very much a non-role, which is kind of a theme in these movies. They're about princesses, and the prince becomes kind of what the princess in most of the stories ends up being, where they don't have much character. But the downside is, usually the prince still saves the day.
Yeah.
Even in The Little Mermaid, where he doesn't do a lot, the one thing he does do is kill Ursula and save the day.
Yeah, they're like damsel in distress kind of.
Yeah, which, like, I still wouldn't be okay with, but I'd be more okay with if the prince had a character and, like, it made sense. But the only one that really has a long scene is Philip, I believe, in Sleeping Beauty, where he has a whole action scene, still doesn't say a word. He just swings a sword like this for, like, 5 minutes and slays a dragon. But it's still something. But, I mean, I guess it's good that they show it through their perspective. Like, it's good they're trying to, like, have mainly girls, I'm assuming, watch these for the marketing purposes, but it's kind of a 2 steps forward, 2 steps back when you give it all about her and give her all this, like, actual, like, story and character, but then don't let her actually do anything with it.
Yeah.
And when she does do something, it's something considered bad. Like selling your soul.
Yeah.
And your voice.
Yeah.
And possibly any intelligence. Because she just kind of dead-eye stare when she's human for a lot of it. Doesn't do a lot. It's a little weird.
She can't talk, so.
Yeah, but, well, she does have expression.
Well, that's true, yeah.
And the old animation for Disney, they did have live-action takes that they would draw afterwards to get an idea of how the faces should move. So it is expressive, it's just she doesn't, there's more communication that can happen. In the book, they spend a good, how long is it? It's at least a couple months together.
Yeah, in the movie it was just not even that long at all.
Yeah. So, like, they actually build a relationship in the book.
Yeah, but even then the relationship in the book is kind of like, well, you're my second.
Yeah. Yeah, they do build a relationship, it's just not the one she wanted.
Yeah.
And I feel like part of that is she never acts on it, like, in that whole time together.
Yeah.
She's one, probably because, you know, she's in a lot of pain, for reasons we'll get to later.
Yeah.
But there is still kind of this thing where it's kind of like when you have a crush on someone, and even if you get in there in a circle, you still don't ever talk to them, you never actually confess to them.
Yeah.
And then when you get upset whenever they, you know, go into someone, it's like, well, yeah, you never said anything. Yeah. Maybe you should, like, try. Don't try too hard, because that's bad, but, like, just try a little bit.
Yeah, but there wasn't like an effort to like, I was the one who saved you. It was just like,
Yeah. Nathan, you're a little quiet there. You have any opinions on this?
No, I'm lost at this point. I
saw
watched
it
the movie.
once.
Yeah.
Pretty colors, nice song.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, cool. A lot of pastels in there. Well, speaking of that, the animation itself shouldn't be dismissed. Like, that is a huge part of why those movies, I think, hold up to me. Is the animation is gorgeous all the way through. And like I said, they did a lot of interesting techniques, like having live action stuff happen so they could get the expressions right and the people right. If you look in a lot of old animation, you can see there's the moving part and then there's the still image in the background. And they put one image over the other so it can move. And you can usually tell because the background's more detailed, and two, it's got like a darker shade to it. And those backgrounds in all the old Disney movies, even now, are beautiful backgrounds.
yeah, you can tell they spent a lot of time on that. Very detailed, colorful.
Yeah. And one of the things I find most interesting about the movie that doesn't get touched on is they build a world. Like, there's more to this place. Is it called? It's not called Atlantis, right? Yeah, but it's basically Atlantis. In this undersea kingdom, the kingdom formerly known as Atlantis, you have the castle itself, you have all the beautiful lights and stuff, you have the grottos, you have those shipwrecks, like you have a full explorable world, and it does this thing where they don't talk about it, they never mention where things are, but you know it's lived in, you know there's stuff there.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important. But there is kind of a weird disconnect because you don't see a lot of the mermaids just swimming around the town. It feels like a kingdom that's massive but only has like 3 people in it.
It really does.
And it's a little empty in that respect. Probably because it cost a lot of money to animate that many fish people. But that is a kind of a case in these Disney movies as a whole, is that you have these big extravagant landscapes and you have like a handful of really interesting characters, but the people who live in the world kind of take a back seat. But I assume their lives are not that bad. They live in a Disney world.
Right.
They probably are all fed. They probably all make good money. There's no poor actual peasants.
Yeah.
But, like, it'd still be interesting.
I feel like it's mostly, like, it looks empty throughout the whole thing, and then at the end, or like when there's some sort of big gathering, it's like, oh my gosh, look at all these fish.
Yeah, it's like, where do they all go?
Yeah.
Well, I guess like fish, they were hiding in their castles and their holes, and they don't want to pop out in front of the screen. Don't want to spook them. Don't tap the glass kind of deal. And then the king, Triton, who is basically Poseidon, but hopefully not really, because Poseidon in myth is kind of an asshole. He has that Poseidon look, he has the Triton, he has the power, but he doesn't really do much with it.
Not really. He just, I feel like the theme that they wanted to go with is like he's already done all he can, and now he's like retired almost.
Yeah, he does feel kind of like a retired sea captain kind of deal. Like he knows the dangers, but he doesn't want to go back out there.
Yeah.
Although if Ariel is the princess, assumedly because she's the only one you see in the original film, she's the favorite, considered to be the next ruler. Probably should teach her some ruling. There's no talk about fish politics. Like, what's the class system? Is her little guppy friend like considered a lower class citizen?
Right.
Because I mean, he doesn't have a human body. Like.
Yeah, but he's also like in love with her too.
Yeah, which is kind of, I think, forgotten by a lot of people. There is kind of a weird thing where a lot of people kind of want Ariel, I'm assuming, in this kingdom, and if the fish guppy's indication. Although that would never work, sadly.
Yeah.
Because she's too human, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, they also never go into, like, I feel like if I was one of her sisters, I would have been mad with her because she's the youngest and the prettiest and she sounds the best, and, like, all the other sisters in the original story are very supportive of her.
Yeah.
And then in the Disney, they don't really go into it at all.
Yeah, it's kind of a similar deal with, like, Snow White having Rose Red never show up in any of her stuff there. But to be fair, Snow White started as a story without a sister and then got a sister later. But they do deal with that, and that would have been an interesting element to bring into a film that's much longer than a little children's book, so you have the room to grow. One character they did give a lot more stuff to was Ursula, though, who probably one of the better Disney villains, which is saying something. Disney's good with villains. They're all very clearly just evil, but they're fun and they're good.
Yeah.
And Ursula, whose design was based off of Divine, a popular drag queen in the 80s who was on a show, I believe, with Roger Waters. One is a lot more nefarious, has a very cool looking lair with all the purples and everything, all the bones. And her whole plan is to basically be a snake oil salesman who turns you into a little urchin thing. I don't know if that gives her power or what, or just fun.
I think just the ultimate goal for her is to like take over. Like she wants to be on top.
Yeah, just 'cause. She does look nice in the crown, to be fair. It does fit her.
Yeah.
And she is unique because she is based on an octopus for her fish design.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't really play with any other types of design, which if you look into actual mermaid stuff, like, depending on where in the sea you are, you might get a different kind of mermaid. Some might have, like, shrimp bodies. Like, that'd be an interesting element to look at. And octopus, a lot scarier than fish.
Yeah.
Like, bigger, scarier, can kill a lot more. I get why she feels she's on top of the food chain.
Yeah.
But there is kind of a thing where she's fun, she's malicious, but like a lot of these Disney ones, her plan doesn't really go too far. And her whole plot to get the trident from this roundabout way of buying the soul, basically, of Ariel kind of shouldn't work. It does, but it shouldn't. It doesn't really correlate.
I feel like it sounds like it's well thought out, but she only had a minute to be able to plan it out. Cause,
Yeah.
I mean, the Little Mermaid Ariel hadn't even really thought about doing that yet, so she didn't have that long to make this plan.
Well, and it's basically kidnapping. Like, she doesn't physically take Ariel, she just takes her voice and her soul. Which I guess part of the plan is I can't physically kidnap her because Trident will just kill me. But if that's the case, why didn't I try and kill her to begin with?
Well, I mean, I feel like now Ursula has something that Ariel eventually would really like back.
But what about all the souls that he's got locked away? Does Trident not give a
Oh,
shit about
that's so
them? Like,
true.
maybe that's where all the people are missing. Like, she's taken that many
what?
people slowly taking over his kingdom, and Trident just doesn't care. He just doesn't give a shit. He's done.
Until they get the smallest, youngest, prettiest
Yeah.
daughter.
That's where like all the sisters are at first. Like, and they all look sad and like kind of gross, but they're all living together, and Ursula's not really doing anything with them or to them. It's not taking power from them. It's just fun.
Yeah, just bored.
Yeah. But she does get one of the best villain songs with Poor Unfortunate Souls, which kind of breaks away from the music from before, because this movie, not only did it bring in a Broadway aspect, it also brought in a different musical style with a lot of like Caribbean-based music, which wasn't originally the plan. It wasn't until they were in the process of it, and I think it started with the crab, because in the original story he was more of a staunch kind of British butler, and they changed him to Jamaican. Well, faux Jamaican. I'm pretty sure. What? Who did the voice?
Of Sebastian?
Yeah, it's not Jamaican. It might have even been a white guy, but like it definitely wasn't Jamaican. But starting with that, they kind of slowly shifted the music from the traditional Broadway to the kind of Caribbean style for the better. It's more lively, more interesting.
Yeah.
Kind of necessary given a lot of their previous stuff had already done it. But with hers, it's kind of this Baroque, kind of like Taranta style, Eastern European kind of roll with it.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, and also kind of, I guess, plays with the fact that Ursula, I guess, is kind of more nomadic and on her own. Maybe she's persecuted. She's the only octopus there.
Oh,
Tried to kill the octopus. There's so many layers of story that could have been put into it, but
yeah.
no one.
I feel like just by like glancing, I mean, I don't want to stereotype, but just by glancing at Ursula, if I were to see Ursula, you look bad. So.
Yeah, but I feel like a lot of times that kind of stuff is something that society ingrains in you.
Yeah.
For all we know, Ursula was a great, nice person with magical powers that could save the world, and Triton's like, nah, you're too good at this. I'm in charge.
Yeah.
I'm also kind of a dick. Like, can't do
There's
that.
only room for one of us.
Yeah. Which, I mean, They both have gray hair, and I'm assuming they have a history. They know each other.
There has to be. I feel like Ursula might have been part of what happened with Ariel's mom.
Maybe. But you feel like if they did that, they would hint more to it, because he just kind of doesn't like her. He doesn't actually hate her with any real passion until she takes his daughter's soul.
Yeah.
Again, no value on any of the other thousands of souls she has, but Ariel's soul's worth all of it.
Yeah.
The one who ran away, betrays you, and left your world.
Exactly, doesn't want to be part of this world.
But yeah, I really like Ursula's song. I like her little flotsam and jetsam eels with the different colored eyes, which I believe was a reference to Bowie. Because of the time period and him being as popular, and it was like an interesting thing to put in there.
Yeah.
If it wasn't like directly, it was very much brought up after the fact. Like people kind of noticed that.
Yeah, just by you mentioning that, I was like, that makes sense.
Yeah. But a lot of the visual style was based around the 80s, like Ariel being Alyssa Milano, basically. Ursula, of course, being divine. Flotsam and Jetsam having the Bowie eyes. There's a lot of 80s elements, but people consider this a 90s film.
Yeah.
Because it was late 80s when it came out, and a lot of kids who watched the other ones that were all through the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of, people forget the 80s aspect, but there's a lot of it in there. Even in the pastels and everything. I'm surprised there were no synths in there.
Yeah.
Which maybe I would have liked more. I like that like dark 80s synth score. That would have made it. John Carpenter doing the score to Little Mermaid would have been amazing to me. But then there's the prince who gets nothing really.
Yeah.
What's he the king of? This portside town? Like he doesn't have a beautiful castle or anything. Like at least in Cinderella, that prince may have been boring, but his castle was huge.
Right?
Like, you know what? I'm okay with her being a gold digger in that, because like, yeah, it's bigger than anyone should have a castle be.
Yeah.
Historically accurate too. French castles were massive for no reason.
Yeah, and I feel like in The Little Mermaid it was just like I don't feel like she had another chance to see any other cute boys. It was just like, you're a sailor, so I'm looking at you and you're gorgeous.
Assumedly. He's animated. In real life, he could look awful.
Right?
I mean, he also doesn't look like a prince. He looks like just a sailor dude. He could be lying. He might not actually be a prince.
I feel like what brought them together in the first place was that neither of them wanted to do what they were supposed to do. Which is normally what brings rebel kids together.
Yeah. It's just a shame their rebellion didn't proceed past that meeting. Like, it would have been nice if they had conversations about not wanting to be the things they were and like actually actively fought to make something different.
Yeah.
But
that definitely would have given them more depth, and I feel like that would have had more kids be more interested in it and relate to it.
Yeah, having it be less of just a theme of love and family, and also a theme of like, if you want to be an individual and break away from your family legacy, you need to actually think about it and actually plan what you want to do with yourself. Because just leaving doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
It just hurts yourself and hurts those around you. You need to actually have a plan. And if you're going to connect with someone on that level, like, that'd be a really good starting point for a relationship, is a shared connection of goals in life.
Yeah.
But there is kind of a little bit of squandered opportunity. I know they add a couple of things in the Broadway musical, because they turned this into a Broadway musical since they used so many Broadway elements. But a lot of the elements added didn't do much. They did add, I can't remember if it's in the original or the redone, because they did the original, didn't sell very well, let it go for a little while, and then recently, I believe it was 2014, they brought it back and made some changes. But in one of those versions, one of the songs alludes to a past between King Triton and Ursula. The sisters are in there. There's more elements to it, but they don't do much with it. Do you need something? Well, the dog wants attention, I think. But yeah, and so that kind of is it for the movie. And moving on from that, the original story by Hans Christian Andersen was a French author, made a lot of these stories, and has a lot more. It's not near as dark as a lot of the other fairy tales that Disney based their thing on. And a lot of the dark elements aren't really graphic, they're more just kind of harder stakes, and more personal stakes.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's not darker in the terms of just making it darker. It's darker because it's more relatable, it's more lifelike.
Yeah, for a children's book, it would be called more adult.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a bad term, because mature themes can still be imparted onto kids in proper ways. Look at The Land Before Time. movie dealing with loss. Like, you can do it. It's fine. But in the original, like we've been alluding to, Ariel had a lot of sisters.
Mhm.
They supported her. Most of the family kind of supported her.
Yeah, she like. I feel like in the movie it was more of like a I don't feel like I belong and I'm an outcast. But in the movie it was like everybody loves you and wants you to be here. You just don't want this.
Yeah. And there's also an element that's not in the movie, kind of. And that's the whole mentioning thing about Ursula taking her soul. In the books, they allude to she doesn't have one because she's a mermaid. Because apparently in Hans Christian Andersen's world, there's a god, but he's also kind of a dick. Like, making these creatures with a society, but no souls can't go into heaven.
Well, I didn't know if that was like a play on like, you know, like if you want to like look in the Bible, the angels didn't have souls, which is why the devil fell from heaven because he was mad that he didn't have a soul.
Yeah.
He wanted a soul, and I didn't know if that was like a play on the mermaids too.
I mean, it could be. The element that brings up, though, is the angels still got to be in heaven, and they were designed not to have the same emotions. They're designed to be kind of tools.
Yeah.
Like, they're not creatures in the same respect that most living creatures are. And mermaids, maybe in mythology, aren't exactly. They're more kind of tools of nature and chaotic, but in the book, they're nice people.
Yeah.
Kind of deserve a soul at that point. Like,
Yeah.
they're doing good things. They're saving people. But there's that element, and that kind of gives her more strength in wanting to leave. It's not just I don't want to be like my parents. I don't belong here. It's more of this inherent thing of wanting to be, like, you feel lesser than. You don't have a soul. You feel like you're lesser than. And it's kind of a more relatable thing of feeling like that. Especially for any marginalized group, you feel like we're not doing anything wrong, we have a society, like we're fine, but we're considered not as good, and we're not going to get as good of a chance in life.
Yeah. Well, maybe it was just a play on the mermaids get to live for 300 years and people with souls don't.
Possibly.
So it's like a trade-off.
Possibly. Do animals have souls? Because turtles live a long time.
Oh, that just opens it up. To
And
like,
if the sea creatures have souls, but the mermaids don't, that's even worse.
Oh,
That is so much worse.
I didn't even think about that. Wow.
Like, now the guppy has a lot more of a chance. He actually has a soul. Like, he can make it.
Yeah.
But so there is kind of a weird dichotomy there, but it is a French story. It is written a while back, and usually these type of stories are based around like culture and history. So there are some elements I can understand there. I mean, a lot of those European nations that were like heavily considered civilized had some weird views that snuck into stuff without them even realizing it, like the imperialism all throughout Lord of the Rings. Like, although that's a little bit more intentional. But there is that kind of element there. But on a bigger scale, like, it gives her more of a reason to do it. And then also her choice with Ursula is severe, but it's not fatal.
Yeah.
Like, she can do it. It'll be fine. She won't lose her soul or anything. She just will have to deal with pain. Because, as it's put, it's like walking on knives and like having knives stabbed into you every time you move your legs. Which feels like not worth it
Yeah.
for a guy who she saves, just like in the movie. But instead of just leaving him be and letting him think it was her who saved him, she leaves him in front of a nunnery and lets him think that they saved him.
Yeah.
And kind of like hides herself, and like she's fitting more in line with the rules. She's not like trying not to expose herself too much, which does bite her in the ass in the end.
Yeah. Like even if she was to like jump up like hey, it was me.
Yeah, like. But if mermaids don't have souls, maybe the prince would kind of not like her for that.
Yeah, but he was supposed to be able to share his soul with her.
Yeah, but he doesn't know this.
Yeah.
He doesn't know the plan.
So I guess she kind of like blindly went into that thinking,
Yeah.
well, he's not gonna have a problem sharing his soul with me.
He's not going to be racist to mermaids. Like, why would anyone do that? Like, for all we know, Prince Philip, his kingdom got made on the bones of mermaids. We don't know. But, yeah, she makes this decision on her own, of her own volition. Kind of, the one person who doesn't get agency in any of these stories is the prince. He gets more agency in the book, but he has no say in this, really.
Yeah.
He kind of gets thrusted along in a lot of these things. Which he's still kind of boring in the book, too, so that's fine. Like, he doesn't have a character. He's kind of just
Yeah,
there.
not really. Well, even in the book, I feel like he's more like matter of fact, like more along the lines of Ariel is like my backup, my pet.
Yeah, there's a weird class dynamic that develops from there because she also loses her voice too, and he finds her, and they spend a lot of time together, and she's like his confidant, but she's this mute girl he just found, doesn't have any social standing, so he's not gonna go for her.
Yeah.
Unless he miraculously saved his life, but he doesn't know that.
Yeah.
He also likes to watch her dance, which, if you recall, we just mentioned, feels like knives digging under her legs. But she does it.
She does it anyway. She keeps doing it.
And just the fact that the prince asked her to dance for him kind of is weird to me. Like, there's some weird connotations there, especially given how the fact that he still doesn't pick her. It's like, man, you made her dance for you every day.
Yeah.
That hurt.
Yeah.
Like, even if you didn't have magic making your legs feel bad, after a while your feet start to hurt when you dance. Like, a little bit mean. But the prince decides to go for who he thinks was the nun who saved him. I'm assuming he just went in and was like, one of you saved me. She's pretty. I'll pick her.
I think it was just like, that was the first one. Like, because she came outside of the nunnery and he opened his eyes and saw her and just like assumed. Although I feel like when they actually did get married at the end, I feel like it would have came up. Like, I didn't save you. You were just laying on the beach.
Yeah, which lends itself to the notion either, one, she's like, well, sure I did, because she wants to become a queen.
Yeah.
Which I get, like, yeah, in those times, better than being a nun. But also, how much time did they spend together? Because if he's spent all this time with Ariel, he doesn't mention the nun until it's too late. You don't see them spending time together, and you don't really see Ariel's off time at the castle, which would probably not be that great. Probably wouldn't be that pleasant.
Yeah, and I mean, even then when he ended up marrying the nun, and she like, they woke up and she was gone, I'm curious to see what her standpoint of oh, you just have like a random dumb girl following you around, like that's really, like she didn't have any kind of opinion on it.
Yeah, which makes her a really bad nun, but explains why she would so easily give up her devotion to marry a prince. So
Yeah.
maybe, because Ursula doesn't show up in this after she does her thing. I don't think she's called Ursula. She's just the sea witch.
Yeah, and I mean, even then, I feel like the sea witch it even makes you want to feel like she's the bad guy, but she wasn't in any way the bad guy. She was like, these are the facts. This is what's going to happen. If you want to do it, do it.
Yeah, and like, we tend to think of witches traditionally as like Hansel and Gretel style, or the witch huntings type of deal where they're malicious, but a lot of stuff like witches are just, naturalistic healers, and they're pretty much just people, and very matter of fact. And she doesn't do much past her initial thing. She doesn't have to turn into a woman to just trick the prince, although maybe she was the nun. We never know, in which case in this story Ursula wins. And now she's a queen for another kingdom, but whatever. Like, she deserves some good things too. Like, she didn't do anything that bad. She didn't kill anybody.
Not in this one.
She didn't even kill anybody in the 80s one. She just
No,
turned
but
into
she
little
tried.
creatures. She just tried. To be fair though, I feel she was provoked.
Well.
Also, Flotsam and Jetsam gotta eat. Eels
Yeah.
are carnivores.
Yeah.
Like, she can't help it. Also, octopi are carnivores.
Yeah, but they're gonna eat the whole town of mermaids?
Well, that's why you turn them into little things first. Makes them more delectable. Yeah. And they don't have souls. The fish do, so she can't eat the fish.
Right.
So that's...
This makes it okay.
Yeah, that's why it's okay. They don't have souls, so clearly it's fine. But yeah, the prince and the nun get married. Pretty simple affair. Ariel's heartbroken. But there is another caveat to the wish that makes it where it has a bit more purpose for why she has to fall in love with him. Or at least make him fall in love with her. And that's how she gets her soul. She has legs, and still no soul.
There's no like time limit on it or anything, so I mean that's nice that she has all the time in the world.
Yeah, she could have waited for them to eventually like get divorced, which may
Well,
not have
I
been
feel
possible.
Well, the witch said that the very next day when the sun rises, after the prince marries another girl, her heart just breaks and then she turns into sea foam.
Yeah, but that seems more like maybe don't be so sad about it. Maybe move on, and you want to turn into sea foam, or it's about marriage, but it never says the prince has to love her, and the prince may not love the nun either. Like,
I guess so.
you
Well, I
just-
mean, they're only 16, so.
But in those times, because this is supposed to take place in assuming a time before even the books were made.
Yeah.
That was marrying age. Like, they kind of were adults. It only becomes weird when you keep making it the thing in current movies.
Yeah.
So maybe don't do that anymore, please. Especially when you put them in like a seashell bikini and stuff, like, and like go on the beach. Like, maybe don't do
Yeah.
that. Or at least bump the age up 2 years. It's still weird, but at least be legally acceptable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like they did give her aspects of looking older. I want to say.
Yeah.
Because I do have to remind myself that she's only 16, which is for most of the princesses.
Yeah. It's like with Jasmine especially. That's another one that's
yeah.
real weird. But that'll be a topic for another day.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as you said, she does turn into sea foam. Heart's broken. She's told, well, if you kill the prince.
Oh yeah. Well, that's what I meant by like the sisters actually support her.
Yeah.
Because like they like cut off all of their hair to be able to give her this knife to murder the prince. So.
Yeah, and if your sisters are complicit in murder, like, it's pretty solid. Like,
yeah.
they're like, hey, we figured it out. Kill the prince, and you'll be fine. You can come back. Like, it's not the best option, but you'll live.
Yeah, and you'll still get your 300 years.
Yeah.
You might not have a soul, but you still get all that time with it.
Yeah. Although maybe if she just waited the 300 years, like, the nun would probably die first. I mean, you never know.
Yeah, even then she just kind of gave up and just like threw herself off the side of the boat.
Well, there is an interesting notion where she doesn't just give up. The way Hans Christian Andersen originally had it, she sees the prince in the bed, is about to stab him, doesn't do it, throws herself out there and sacrifices herself, turning into sea foam. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's sad, but it still gives her this heroic slant where it's not just, I don't think the implication is, it's not just, oh, I love him too much, I can't kill him. It's, I can't take someone's life for my own. I got myself into this. I have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And Anderson decided the way I kind of imagine it, he probably wrote the ending, is like, this is real dark, but that little spark of being a hero kind of took hold, because he decided to change it and add this whole other thing that I get why he gets flack, because it is kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But she gets swept up and turned into a wind spirit, with the caveat that, hey, if you help humans for so many years, you can get a soul and go to heaven.
And if each one you help takes years off your life, but each one that you don't help adds on.
Yeah, because we can't have it be too easy for her.
Yeah, but even then, no matter what, at the end of it, she's going to be able to start all over as a human because she gets a soul.
Yeah, so he does give her kind of a happier ending, which at the time got derided a lot. One, I get it because it's kind of out of nowhere. You don't have any mention of the wind spirits earlier on. It just kind of happens. And if you don't know anything about them as like folklore stuff, like you're really just gonna be like, what? Just pulled it out of his ass and threw it on there, like whatever. But also because it suddenly makes it a moral lesson, and he got a lot of flack for having a moral lesson in this children's book, which defeats kind of the purpose of most children's books. Like I don't understand the flack for that. It's not even a bad lesson. It's taking responsibility for your own actions and sacrificing yourself for the good of others.
Yeah.
Needs the many outweigh the needs of the few. Like, she became Spock. Like, it works.
Yeah, I feel like the only way that you can probably misinterpret that is, like, she put herself through so much suffering that there was some sort of good at the end, which isn't always necessarily true, because she put herself through that.
Yeah. To be fair, though, suffering that's just followed by more suffering only works for, like, really depressing movies that adults watch to feel bad. Like, kids don't want to see that.
Yeah.
And also, if you're sending your kids to school to learn, why not let them learn in a book too? But I don't know. But he directly mentions in his writings about it that he wanted to give her more agency in herself and give her more of like a personal arc and kind of have her succeed at this in some way and still find something in it, which is kind of a noble notion that I wish the movie had done, even if not like magical wind spirits at the end. Like you could have taken something from that. She could have been the one to steer the boat and kill Ursula. Like, she should have done something more. And maybe not even... Well, they can't have her not marry the prince, because then that'd be the whole purpose of Disney. But, like, maybe if one of their stories didn't end with, like, a princess and a prince getting married and actually ended with them...
that kind of opened up a whole new, like... They could have gone in a different direction with Ariel's daughter.
Yeah.
the next movie.
Yeah, they did do a sequel with her daughter who is human but can become a mermaid.
It's like the opposite.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah, real ingenious script there, Disney. Let's just do the same thing but reversed.
Yeah.
But there is some interesting elements. There's also some not so interesting elements, like Ursula's crazy sister, who they never talked about,
Right.
but is suddenly here and is the same as her but is skinny suddenly, because that's how that works.
I mean, that was almost as if, like, in the book, it was like, well, we're gonna put in the wind spirits, but in the second movie, we're gonna put in the second sister.
Yeah,
So
it doesn't even have like a moral, like, uplifting element. It's just kind of there. It'd be like if Maleficent had a sister who was like Maleficent Light. It doesn't work. All the evil's kind of gone. And no, there's no poor unfortunate souls in that.
Yeah.
Who wants that? But yeah, so that's kind of the book, which in a lot of ways is more progressive than the movie. And if they had gone more with that, I think Disney would have still could have had the Renaissance and gone on a very different and more unique track, which they did start to do a little bit in some of those later films. Going back, like Mulan was a big example of that. They did start to like have that push. Maybe after the movie came out, they kind of realized that. Because then, as going from the 80s to the 90s, there was kind of a big progressive shift in a lot of that.
And I know, like, coming into the newer Disney movies, a lot of the Disney princesses is like, we don't need no man.
Yeah. But still, they end up with a man. Like, there's still some that they want to do it, but they also want to be traditional. And at some point, I think they're gonna have to bite the bullet and just pick a side.
Well, in Frozen, did Elsa end up with anybody?
Elsa did not. But the sister did. And she's considered, even though you think Elsa's the main character, technically she's not.
Yeah.
She's just the more interesting sister.
Oh, what about Moana? That one's my favorite right now, Moana. Did she end up with someone?
She did not. But that is Disney and Pixar.
Ah.
Yeah, Pixar is more willing to do that than traditional Disney is. Which that could be a whole other conversation. Because that's a lot of interesting changes in like how Pixar does a lot more interesting things with their stories and more adult things than traditional Disney does. But the only other aspect I really want to touch on with this has nothing to do with the Little Mermaid story, but more with the idea of mermaids in general. Because if you know anything about mermaids in actual stories, they're more like they are in Peter Pan. They will try and kill you, be it for fun or just to like eat you, depending on the folklore. But if you remember, there's that scene in Peter Pan where the mermaids show up to Wendy and kind of jealously try and push her into the water and drown her. And in traditional stories, that's what they did. They would trick people into coming to them with a siren song and then drown them.
Yeah.
And that's mermaids. Mermen, one, did not look like mermaids. They looked more like King Triton, but uglier.
Oh,
which is really gross in context, because that means all of the mermaids have to look like young women, all the mermen have to look like old, scary men, but they still gotta populate somehow, and it's real weird. At least, I guess, maybe if they go by fish rules of mating, it's a little less seeing each other. So, this is a little bit better, but someone's gonna feel a little inadequate in that scenario. I'm just saying, like, unless maybe in mermaid culture the men are the pretty ones, and that's why the mermaids are so, like, ornery about it.
Maybe.
I don't know. They don't talk about those things.
Right?
They're just tools to be used to make people drown and die.
Yeah.
But there is kind of a weird thing that mermaids are traditionally kind of seductive creature and a playful, chaotic creature. And are kind of more in line with what Ursula tries to do. Because even though she isn't traditionally like pretty, she does have kind of this seductive vibe to her that she pulls off. Whereas Ariel looks more like what a mermaid should look like, but has none of those things and is also 16. And shouldn't have those things. Still kind of does in that beach scene. But it is weird that you'd make a story about a young princess finding herself and base it off of a creature that is found around, one, seduction, and two, getting men. Which kind of inherently makes a flaw in her purpose. Like, it's like, well, if that's all mermaids did anyway, she's just kind of following suit in that respect. So it's a weird kind of thing.
Well, I mean, that's interesting because, like, with sirens and mermaids and stuff that are supposed to, like, pull you in to drown you, they kept that idea. Like, Ariel had the prettiest voice.
Yeah.
But she didn't really use it.
So is her breaking type supposed to be her not killing humans? they don't touch on that.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons, it's supposed to be a kid's story now, but it is weird how we kind of assign these archetypes, these like very specific gendered archetypes to mythological creatures, and then when we bring them into new stories to give them new light, we shy away from what they're originally about. Sometimes to the detriment, because it creates this weird kind of, you know what they're supposed to be, and you're seeing them like this, and still uses elements from it, and it makes this kind of gross looking thing. Like, if Triton's dad was like Merman in the stories, he would have like had actual good advice, and also caused some storms, which he does cause a storm, but it's more like Poseidon kind of deal than Merman themselves.
Yeah.
And no seaweed green hair, which I would have loved to see.
Yeah.
Just bright pastel green hair. Maybe they could have actually related on a bigger level, because he like dyed his hair.
Yeah.
Maybe he dyed it gray, and that was his rebellious phase. But yeah, there is kind of an interesting element with that, and I feel like with a lot of these Disney movies, which I'm sure we'll probably talk about at other points in time, because they are such a big cultural thing, and Disney's just getting bigger and bigger, for better or worse. But their movies, because they are based on actual stories, and those stories are based on cultures and stuff, there's a lot to them that the movies themselves kind of just brush over that I feel like need to be talked about, be it in their choice of animation style and where they come from, as well as the folklore of the actual creatures involved, the original stories, the changes and elements, the elements they took from real world stuff, like bringing in the Broadway and the Caribbean stuff in there. And it's important to know in stories and movies and things where all the pieces come from. One, it keeps you from just blasting it because you don't like it. Because my whole thing with movies is, it's okay to not like a movie, but you can still objectively decide if it's good or bad. You can still be like, I love this movie, but objectively I know it's awful. Which is easier to do for a lot of people than being like, I don't like this movie, but objectively I understand it's a good film.
Yeah.
Usually if you personally don't like it, it's very hard to objectively say it's a good movie. But it's possible, and it's also good to understand where things come from, to understand ourselves, our cultures, why we think the way we do, our own childhoods, because a lot of us grow up in these movies.
It almost like sometimes connects dots for you that you didn't even know you needed those dots connected.
Yeah, like seeing a movie as a kid can shape you in ways you don't realize till much later in your life, and understanding the elements of that movie and where they come from can also help both you understand how you became how you are, as well as understand how you can move forward and maybe break away from some of the more negative aspects that film and stories can have on you.
Yeah, or even trying to understand someone else.
Yeah, and that's why it's also good. One of the things we'll be talking about is foreign films, because they have a very different take on a lot of things. Like, there are foreign films about 9/11, and they are very different takes while still addressing the issue at hand. And it's good to know how the rest of the world sees things and understand on a big whole, because part of the whole point of art is to express yourself, and expressing yourself is expressing so many other things behind that. And the better we understand that, the more our art can evolve and change. And so that's going to be the main mission of these talks going forward, be it with music, art, movies, all kinds of stuff like that. And where our sources of technically entertainment, though not all of them are entertaining, but where a lot of it comes from, for good or for ill. So that's it for this first one. Thank you everybody who's watching this. Whenever you decide to watch this, we're filming this in December, so there's still like a Christmas tree over there, but you'll be getting this much later. So thank you all, and I think that's it.
Yeah.